Oh, we're live. Awesome. Hey everybody, and welcome to this edition of Between the Pages Live with the Southern Pen Book Shop. I'm Becky, your host. Mary's not going to be with us tonight. She is celebrating her husband's birthday with him and her family. So, and that's a rare occasion for Mary to be able to get all of her family together. So, and if any of you guys have adult children, you understand, well, just almost grown children too, they don't have to be adults, how hard it is to get the family together to do something simple. So she is not going to be with us tonight. Our guest author tonight is Becky Condon, and she is going to be joining us in a few minutes to talk about her book, The City Slicker's Guide to Country Living. It's a legal thriller that is set off of based off of actual events that her and her family experienced. So we're looking forward to having her on in a few minutes to share a lot of her stories about her books. And also, she's a very interesting lady. She's a pilot, and she's going to talk a lot about her flying days with us. So let's go ahead and get everything started. And let's hope that the technical side of things will work nice for us today. All right. So this past Saturday, we hosted the Georgia Independent Author of the Year Awards Banquet for 2020. We had a really great time. A lot of authors did come in and were able to make the banquet. And it was hosted at Katie's Downtown, which is a really great restaurant. And Katie's is actually closed right now. They've had to go through some management changes because of unexpected deaths in the family with the owner, and the family is regrouped and is rebranding the restaurant. They are going to open back up Thanksgiving Day with their traditional Thanksgiving meal. They are going to open up on a new name, which is going to be Cindy B's. So we'll be talking some more about what's coming up with them, because we are going to be making a huge announcement that's going to involve the bookshop and Cindy B's restaurant in the upcoming weeks. We've got some stuff on the drawing board that we're working on. So we'll be sharing that great news with you guys pretty soon. But back to the Georgia Independent Author of the Year Awards. Again, we had a great time. It was a great evening honoring the non-traditionally published independent authors of the state of Georgia. We have already posted up all of the winners and finalists on our Facebook page earlier this week. So, and we have not got them listed up on the website yet. We're working on the website and updating it, but we'll have that up soon too. But submissions for next year open today. Today's the first day for submissions. So if you've published a book between January the 1st or plan to have a book published by December the 31st of this year, and you're a Georgia author, then your book would be eligible to be submitted for next year's Georgia Independent Author of the Year Award. We've got everything up on the website for you to be able to make that submission. We did not set a deadline date or a close date yet, but we will be updating with a close date. We're probably going to close the submission period down in about May or June of next year. We're kind of playing things by ear right now to see how the rest of 2020 is going to pan out for everybody. Our live sales, we are not going to do any live sales in the month of October. We're getting ready for Christmas. We're getting stuff ready for Christmas. I don't believe in pushing Christmas before Halloween. I feel sorry for the turkey. He's kind of the middle child. He gets forgotten Thanksgiving. But our next live sale is going to be November the 3rd. We will start presenting and featuring a lot of our Christmas merchandise that we'll have in the bookshop during the holiday season. Now keep in mind that with our live sales, we do offer a lot of our merchandise at a different pricing than what we offer in the retail location, our retail location. So you definitely want to mark Tuesday, November the 3rd. Hey, that's an easy date. Remember, that's the date to go vote. I didn't even think about that when I picked that date. That's election day. We might change that date, guys. So, but right now, tentatively, we're going to have it on November the 3rd. Maggie Collins with Tangle Creek Designs will be back with us with her holiday home decor to share with you. Don't forget, book trivia night is going to be, our next book trivia night is going to be October the 21st. That is a Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. We're going to have it, we normally do book trivia night the last Wednesday of the month, but that's pretty close to Halloween, so we didn't want to interfere with any Halloween activities, so we're actually going to hold it the week prior. So the next book trivia night is going to be October 21st. We do book trivia through our Zoom meeting room, and we'll post the link up on our website. And also definitely subscribe for our newsletter on our website, southernpennbookshop.com, because we also send out all of our events and links to attend any of our events that are not live on Facebook in our newsletter. So definitely go ahead and subscribe for our newsletter so you can get all the great information. So with that being said, our trivia question for tonight is going to be, in George Orwell's Animal Farm, what was the name of the pig leader? Alrighty, and I'm going to read that again. In George Orwell's Animal Farm, what was the name of the pig leader? And we'll give the answer at the end of the show. If you know the answer, just put it in the comments, and at the end of the show, we'll go through the comments, see who answered correctly, and do a drawing and for a prize or a giveaway. Also, definitely make sure that you flip the page, and when we talk about flipping the page, that means if you can just pass us along to your friends and let them know about us so that they can tune in and get to see Becky during her interview tonight. And also just so that they can, your friends can kind of get to know us a little bit too. So with that said, I'm excited to have Becky tonight. She and I both are kind of kindred spirits in a lot of ways, and one of it is our love for and passion for flying and aviation. So let me get Becky up here now and let you guys get to meet her and hear all of her great stories. So Becky, thank you for coming in and joining us. I'm glad you were able to make it. So you're not up in the air. You haven't been up
today.
Not today. You've been with what I used to call, when I used to fly, you had to hang out with us ground dwellers, didn't you?
I wouldn't say have to. I mean, you do. It's a machine that needs all the parts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can just remember during my flying days that, you could take off on a really gray overcast, kind of a really crappy, drizzly day, and, you'd pop out up on top of the clouds, and it'd be pretty clear blue sky, sunshine.
That's what sold me on the first day that I ever flew in my first ever flying lesson.
Really?
I'd flown a bunch of airplanes, or took rides on a bunch of Navy airplanes because I was in the ROTC, and I'd just gone on a lot of different airplanes on a lot of different flights. And when they do that, it's always a nice clear day down in Pensacola or over in Norfolk. So I hadn't connected any of that. Well, when I came back to my school up at Miami in Ohio, I decided I better take some flying lessons because I wanted to do this thing in the Navy, and they told me I needed flight time, so I was going to go get me some flight time. So I was on my very first flight in a Cessna 150 at the Miami University Airport, and I hadn't even thought about it that it was a gray, cloudy day. It's always gray and cloudy in Southwest Ohio. If you haven't been up there very much, it's always gray and cloudy. So I'd studied, I knew my pre-flight, and I knew all the procedures, and the instructor tested me. He checked every little thing. He was real thorough, and we got in the plane. He showed me what to do, and he showed me the first takeoff, and then he let me fly a little, and then he said, okay, I got to take the airplane now because we're going to climb above this to do some air work. I read about the air work. I had to work on that.
Yeah.
But I said, fly above what? I couldn't imagine what he was even talking about. We're in the air. I was confused by that. Well, he took the airplane, we're climbing, and all of a sudden I realized we're getting close to the clouds, and I was like, oh, I just never even thought of it. And I was like, oh, and I was sort of holding on, and all of a sudden it went boop, and it wasn't that thick of a layer. We were just in it for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And we were out, and it was blue, and it was sparkly, and it looked like a snowy field forever. And I went, oh. And he goes, now you know the secret.
Yeah.
I said, huh? He said, it's always a clear blue day out here. Because we always said, it's a blue day. It's a clear blue day. We'd always get excited about it on the ground. But he goes, it's always a blue day up here.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm in.
And I know what you're talking about, because I can just remember, you pop up, and it's like you said, you're gliding across this fluffy, snowy layer of clouds, and you've got clear blue sky, and all I can think is the land dwellers are down below us with all the rain and the yucky, and they just have no clue. So, and then you got to go back. You have to come right over it. Yeah. So you learned to fly in a Cessna 150.
Those were my first lessons, was in a Cessna 150. I got my flight time, and it qualified me enough to make the selection board for the Navy to choose me for flight school.
So did you have to get a private pilot's license first?
No. In fact, the fellows that wanted to go to flight school just had to pass the flight physical. I had to pass the flight physical as well, but I also had to stand for the selection board. They picked 15 women a year back in those days.
And about what year was this?
78.
Okay.
And they picked 15 women a year. They had done it for about 2-3 years previously, and they did that subsequently for some years. And my year, when I got to my class down in flight school, there was a fellow in my class who said, I saw your picture. His duty during that summer while he was waiting for flight school was the selection board. And he got all the folders, and he got all the papers together and all the applications, and made sure everything was stapled, and made sure all the coffee was made for the admirals, and set up the meeting room for them to make their selections. And he said, yeah, I remember you. You're cute. He goes, we put all the cute ones on top.
Oh, that is so funny.
You did not. I never felt like I was all that, but it was they had all the different stacks for flight time, for other credentials in the aviation business. They had mechanics, airplane mechanics, and flyers with lots and lots of hours. I had 30 before I ran out of money, and I guess that was enough.
Now, did you get to solo in the 150?
Yes, I soloed at 10 hours.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's good.
We were doing our work, and I said, okay, pull over here and stop over there. And I go, okay. Seemed like a simple enough instruction. I was just all about following what he said. And he goes, okay, now I want you to go over there and do 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in a row. Don't go anywhere else. Don't leave the area. When you land the 3rd time, come back here.
Don't forget me.
And I said, okay. Like, gee, that's an awful lot of talk for something so easy. And he goes, so I released the brake and started to move to follow his instruction. He goes, wait. I said, what? And he goes, I gotta get out. And I'm like, what? And he goes, this is your solo.
Yes.
And I went, and he got out and he hit the side of the plane with a big smile, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But it was so much fun. And when I came back, the whole flight school came out and were yay. And
did they cut the back of your shirt?
No, they didn't. We didn't have a tie. We didn't cut the shirt. They didn't do that in that place. But I did get a neat certificate.
Did you? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It was a tradition with ours that I soloed in a Cessna 150 5828 Golf. I'll always remember the tail number on that airplane. Love that airplane. It was sadistic on power off and takeoff stalls because of the torque on it. If you didn't stay right on that right rudder, she'd do a quarter turn spin in a heartbeat with you. So, but anyway, my instructor kind of did the same thing. He was, and my instructor was just a laid back old codger. I think everybody said he could fly barn door if he had to. I mean, he was just, and so he was like, he did the same thing. He was like, pull off on over here, and then he starts saying, now listen, I'm gonna hop out, but just remember it's gonna take off faster, and without me, you're not gonna have my weight in. He's giving me all that. He said, do 3 takeoff and landings, and then come back and get me. And don't forget to come back and get me, because I don't have to walk back to the hangar. Because the flight school that I learned out of was in an old World War II hangar, which is still the only remaining old World War II hangar on the Athens Phillips Airport. So, and then he taught me to become a flight instructor. So I got to do that. I got to do that ritual, and it is just so much fun to turn a student loose.
Well, he said that when I came back and everyone was all gathered around and everything, he said I had to wait until you hit your 10th hour, because the rule was you had to have 10 hours to start. So as soon as I hit tick, he said, okay, pull over there.
Yeah, that's really impressive, because I mean, usually most of my students would solo between 10 to 12 hours. Rarely would I get somebody right at 10.
Thought of it. I knew that it was 10 to 15 in the school, but I hadn't even thought of it. I hadn't started being that cognizant of flight time yet.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know how much I had.
So when you went to the Navy flight school, then you had 30 hours under your belt as a.
I'd done my cross countries and my solo cross countries and my nighttime and a little bit of hood stuff with
yes.
I had all those little boxes checked, but I needed 10 more hours to get my private pilot's license.
Right.
A total of 40. I didn't have any money.
Right. Yeah, and
that's
flying's an expensive hobby, and it's definitely not cheap, because it's not cheap, and that's the reason why
But I met a lady who had her wings already back in my summer training for the ROTC, and she was saying, oh, you want to be a pilot? That's cool. How much flight time do you have? And I said, oh, well, I've flown a T-34, and I've flown an S2, and I've flown an H-57. I've done it, and I listed off all the little Navy airplanes I'd ridden a ride on. And she said, no, how much flight time do you have? I said, huh? She said, flight time. What's in your logbook? Oh, I don't have a logbook. She said, you want to be a naval aviator and you don't have any flight time? And I said, well, the guys don't need any flight time. And she said, you're not a guy. Get over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mom, Dad, I'm going to need some flight time. Here's how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So we worked out that.
Yeah. But about how much was it an hour for you?
I can't remember at all.
Yeah.
That was 43 years ago.
Yeah. I think, well, I started flying in 86 was when I started mine, and it was about $65 an hour. It's $40 for the airplane and $25 for the instructor.
I can't remember.
So, but yeah, that was pretty cool. But you kind of touched on a little bit of something, which is, being a female in a predominantly male type thing. And even in the 80s, you still hit that barrier of being a female. What is one of your favorite stories that you can recall where in hitting that barrier, and how did you handle it?
Oh my gosh, I've had thousands of stories. When I was first in the airline, my first trip, the operating experience, where you go with the instructor on your first trip. With passengers, you're not really qualified until you get by the guy that's with you on that trip.
Right.
I was a flight engineer on the 727 panel, working the instruments and accessories for the airplane. Wasn't flying, just running the panel.
Right.
And the flight engineer did the walk-around inspection. So I'd done a couple with the instructor, and we got to a place, and he said, okay, you passed on your walk-around, you go do it. So, how excited. I was all excited. He trusts me. So I was out there, and I was looking at everything and checking everything, and just every little nut and bolt, and I was counting everything, and it was perfection. So I came back in the airplane, and there was a big guy. I mean, he was a big guy, 6'6", and this wide, and just, sitting there like this with his hands across his chest, and looked really kind of torqued off. He was blocking my seat. I said, excuse me. And the captain and the co-pilot and the flight engineer instructor were sitting there going, tears were coming out. I'm like, what's going on? And this big old guy goes, well, but he said, whoa, like that. And he left.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's just belly laughing and cracking up.
Yeah.
And what's the, and I said, what was that all about?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, he's the fueler. I go, so? They're done with fueling. Is that part, the pre-flight, all the panels closed. And they said, no, he came up here, wanted to know who's the funny, fancy boy that they just hired for a flight engineer. And I said, what? He said, they saw you walking away and wanted to know all that, because I had hair that was longer and curly and on my collar, and he didn't like the way I looked at all. And came up to tell the captain about it and do something, and I'm not going to have it. My company's not going to hire anything like that.
Right.
And I went, like what? And they're like, well, you know. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they said, well, when he saw that you were really a girl, that he realized he had misunderstood, and he didn't know what to think, and we just think that's hilarious. And I said, well, what was he waiting for?
Yeah.
And my instructor said, well, I think he was going to beat the crap out of him.
Oh my word.
I said, oh my. I said, well, you could have told him.
Yeah.
Because he seemed to be all right once he figured out who I was.
Yeah.
And they said, no, this was funnier.
Yeah, I think
so that was how my fellows were supporting me.
They wanted to.
They thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. And that's I think they were kind of waiting to see how you would handle it too, and what your reaction to it would have been.
I was all excited because I got to do a workaround solo.
Yeah.
That's me.
I think my funniest story of hitting that female pilot barrier was one thing we used to do was we would give airplane rides. For $25, we'd take you out for about 30 minutes or so and take you around Athens. And my normal trek was I'd go up north towards Kenny Rogers Farm and fly them over Kenny Rogers Farm so they could see that, and then take them over Athens so they could see University of Georgia and Sanford Stadium and everything, and then come in from the south and land whichever runway we were landing. And it was a Sunday morning, and my boss called me, and he says, look, I've got somebody scheduled to come out to do an airplane ride. In the 172, it's going to be 3 people, a guy and 2 girls. They're college students. And I'm not going to be able to do it. I've got something come up. I'm not going to be able to get out to the airport. Can you do that for me? Because by then I was a flight instructor, commercial pilot, flight instructor, and everything. And I was like, sure, I can do it. No worries, And so I go out there and I walk in the lobby and I greet the guy and the 2 little sorority Susies, the little bow heads. And I go, well, come on and let's go. I've got to pre-flight the airplane and make sure we've got enough fuel and everything. And I hear him say as I'm walking out of the office into the hangar, he goes, a female pilot? We're going to have to fly with a woman pilot? Boy, should have never done that. So anyway, I get him in the airplane, I put the 2 girls in the back, and I put him up front. And I pulled the checklist out. You have to go by the checklist, right? Sure. So he turns around and looks at the girls and goes, she's reading the instruction manual. I didn't say a word. So I guess started up, went out, did the flight, and we chatted a little bit. And he was like, so how long have you been flying? I said, not long. I think this is about my 3rd time. And so we come back in the pattern, and he's like, really, is this your 3rd time ever flying? I said, yeah, this is my 3rd time. I said, my instructor has been letting me take off, but the problem is he's never let me land, so I hope I know how to do this. He turned about as white as your shirt. Oh, no. Now, I had,
I never thought
about 300 hours.
See, I work with people that are customers, so I don't. I had this one. I was a captain fairly fairly new captain, but not that new, maybe a year into it.
Yeah.
And so I've been around the airline for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was standing there saying goodbye to the people like you do. And I was like, oh, a lady pilot, yay, all right, woman power, girl power, stuff like that. That's pleasant. I don't hate that at all. Why? Why would I?
Yeah.
And so they're getting off. And this lady stops and she's looking over, or as a man, as an older man. He's looking over my shoulder. I'm sort of tall, but my co-pilot was taller. And he was standing behind me, stretching his legs. And he goes, hey, back there. And he goes, yes? And he goes, when do you get her all trained up? And he goes, huh? He goes, how much more time does she have to be qualified? And he goes, that's the captain. And he goes, no, when do you get her finished training her? And my co-pilot's like, he couldn't say it. I goes, have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
Keep it moving.
keep moving. Yeah. So I've got a couple of pictures, and we're gonna come back around to your flying days because I've got some pictures to go with your about your flying days that we were able to get in. Let me see if I can get my rat to work for me. It tends to like to travel around the screen. There she goes. About the time I see her, she disappears. But so you went into the Navy. What did you train in with the Navy? What was your trainer?
I flew T-28s.
Okay.
First, and got my primary training there, and then I went to prop training and flew the T-44 King Air.
You got to fly King Airs?
That was the advanced trainer for props back in those days.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not even sure what they're using now.
Yeah.
But they were brand new at the Navy at that time. Smelled like a new car.
Oh yeah.
They were awesome.
Never got to fly King Airs. The only turbo time I got was Aero Commander. And I always said those looked like pregnant guppies with wings because it had that low, the wings were the high wings, and it had that low belly. So now you're a cat mom.
Oh yeah.
So tell us about your kitty cat.
That's Buttercup. And Mother's Day present about 8 years ago.
Okay.
My daughter gets me.
Now so you've had her about 8 years? Cool beans. Now you've had other cats before, right?
I've always had cats.
Now when I was looking through the pictures, Buttercup helped you a lot with your books. I saw a lot of pictures with her in your books.
Yeah. She's next to us 24/7. My husband feeds her a lot, so she's totally spoiled. and he'll go, what is she saying? She'll be sitting there on the ottoman or on the coffee table or on the counter or something. She'll be just staring at him. And he'll move and she'll keep staring at him. She goes, what is she saying? I'm like, I don't know. She yells at me. And we talk that way. But she just stares at him, and he usually breaks down and gets her a snack or a treat or lunch or dinner.
She knows he'll break down and give her what she wants.
She does. So I don't feed her as much because you can only do so much.
Now, she's the only cat you guys have?
She's the only one we have right at present.
Now, looping back around, now this is you getting your wings?
My dad put it on my wings in 1980.
Wow.
January 1980.
So you did all your flight training out of Pensacola?
No, we did the initial primary flight training in Pensacola and Whiting Field. There, off of Pensacola, Air Station is. Different base. That's where I flew the T-28. And when I finished that, I got the prop training, and that was over in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Okay, yeah.
So that's where.
Now, you eventually went on to become a flight instructor for the Navy. So, what did you instruct in?
The T-34.
T-34?
I did my first tour in the C-130s for 3.5 years.
So you got some good heavy time.
And really interesting mission and very neat life. I liked it a lot. And then I went to my shore tour. That was a sea duty. And then a shore duty was back to training command. That was pretty common, so that's what I got. And I flew they'd gotten rid of the T-28s by that time, which was a shame because they were so cool. But then I got on the T-34.
Right.
which was neat.
Now, the pilots that you were training, the Navy pilots that you were training, were you training them to eventually go into flying the heavier aircrafts?
I was teaching the T-34 in primary flight training, like my T-28
Mhm.
training, only this was the T-34 training, same training. So we got Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard students, all naval aviators at the end. And we did familiarization, and we did basic instruments, and we did some navigation, and we did precision landings and acrobatics and formation. We trained them in all these different areas, and when they finished that, they all got selected. Like I had the chance to jets, props, or helos. Now back in the No Girls Allowed Stone Age, girls couldn't get the jets, at least not at that point.
Right.
So I could choose props or helos. Well, I chose props, and off I went. And but the fellows get the jets, props, or helos, and they split into the three groups and go to advanced. So that's what my T-44 was an advanced training
So
school.
you got to teaching the T-44s too?
No, just the T-34. So I taught that. That was my final tour of the Navy.
So when did you leave the Navy?
1986.
Oh, so you left the Navy about the time I was beginning to cut my teeth on learning how to fly. And then after that, did you go straight to Delta? So you went to Delta in '86, and this is your class with Delta.
Can you see which one's me?
Yeah, would that be the one with the skirt and the short curly hair?
Those were my fellows. There were 20 of us, all military. 10 Air Force, 8 Navy, 1 Marine, and 1 Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. So, yeah, I had a lot of friends that came through our flight school and got their private pilot's license because they knew that they were going to eventually going towards the military. And one thing my boss would always tell them is if you're looking to go to the airlines after you finish with your military stint, that you really want to fly like the C-130s and the heavier aircraft because
the idea is the multi-piloted aircraft for that kind of experience. But they like the jet guys too. Don't get that wrong. They like the military time back then. Now it's a mixed bag. They'll take people with enough experience and flight time to be competitive at Delta. Which is very competitive.
Well, the pedal jumpers come along. The little commuter airlines come along, which really helped a lot too, because a lot of the guys that are and ladies who came through our flight school that did not take the military route, that's where they would build their time enough to be able to go with the commercial, the little
the whole face of it changed.
Yeah, and you got to see. You're right. The face of aviation changed. Commercial aviation changed because right about the mid '80s was when a lot of airlines were going under because of the financial economic.
There was a hard time in the early '80s, and then in '85 things were going better again. It does that about every decade in the airline business. So about '85, they started hiring again. A lot of them were hiring again. It was kind of a hiring frenzy. So it was a real bad retention problem in the military. But so everybody was making a choice at that time, and that's when I got hired, and it was the wave of much hiring. So always had good seniority, always had good base beneath me because they were hiring.
Yeah.
So I was super lucky with my timing. And that's what it always is timing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, one more quick question about your aviation career, and then we're going to move over to the book. How long did it take you to go from first officer to captain?
I waited 13 years because I liked my seniority.
Yeah.
I had a husband, I had a daughter, I had a farm. We raised cattle for about 15, 16 years, and we were busy. And so I liked to be in command of my schedule. I liked being home on the holidays. I liked having the days off that I needed for dance recitals, dance concerts, school outings, field trips, and we participated in all of that, both feet.
Right.
So I waited till I had good enough seniority.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, one of my old crusty old captains said, well, I'm just not ready yet. I'm just not ready yet. He said, oh, you'll get the urge. He goes, you'll understand a biological clock. And I'm like, huh? He said, it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
In his opinion.
Yeah.
I think it kind of was. It hits you and you've got to go.
Yeah.
Time to go.
Time to go. And you're right, is when you have to really look at taking care of family needs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a couple more pictures of you with Delta. Let me get my little mouse to move. There you go, sweet case. This is you right now as a captain. This is one of the most recent pictures I found. And I love this one. This one was 100% no guys flight, right?
Yeah, they call those unmanned flights.
Unmanned flights.
It's amusing. and more. I have more co-pilots that are gals than ever before. And
Mm-hmm.
just it's fun when you see them now and then. And when I first started flying with the gals, I for 20 or 25 years
Mm-hmm.
before that, everyone was like always telling me it's so different to fly with a woman, and I'm like, how? I had the same school you did, I had the same training you did, I've got the same credentials you do, exactly the same. How can I be that different? I don't think I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I started flying with a few gals, and I'm like, I finally said to one of my co-pilots, because I was a captain before I ever flew with any,
Mm-hmm.
I said, huh? And she goes, what? And I said, all those guys were right all these years. And she goes, what's that? And I said, it is different flying with a girl. She goes, I know, right? So we didn't feel ourselves silly over that.
Yeah.
So it's true. We are different.
Yeah.
But you don't know it until you're,
You actually
looking at it.
experience. Yeah.
Inside it doesn't feel different. But.
Now the book you've written, and it's a pretty thick book. I mean, there's a lot in it.
I like to tell stories. Have you got that about me so far?
But the thing is your style of writing is so, it just immediately draws you in.
Thank you.
And I would sit down and just go, well, I'm just going to read a couple pages. And the next thing I know, I'm like chapters into the book. But the title of the book is The City Slicker's Guide to Country Living. And I kind of call it a little bit of a legal thriller set based off of real life happenings. And go ahead and just kind of share with our viewers, the story behind this book.
This is a novel about a young family that moves to the country. They had saved and saved and saved to get their dream property and build their house, and they wanted to have some kind of farming, and they weren't even sure in the beginning what they were going to farm, but cattle seemed to be the right thing as far as what the neighborhood was doing and what we could learn. And we liked that. We really like animals. So we became cattle ranchers. And our little family in the book encountered neighbors that were less than receptive.
I call them the neighbors from hell. That's what I call them.
And it was a struggle to be accepted. It was a struggle to stay out of trouble. It was a struggle to get along.
Right. Now, what was this? And kind of elaborate on the struggle to be accepted. Was it more or less? It was that small town mentality of you ain't from around here.
That was it exactly.
You're from the city. You don't belong here.
Yeah. That was it exactly. Just kind of a clannish attitude, and we weren't from around there. We were Yankees. That was put across to us many times, even though I guess that's true. My parents were Tennesseans, but I grew up in Cincinnati. My husband grew up in Portland, and so
But you've been in Georgia for many years before that,
since
right?
the 80s.
Yeah. So I mean.
So, my dad had a story about that. He moved down after he retired. He brought my mom down and made a home in where we live now too, and was there. And he'd been there for about 15 years at this time. And his next door neighbor was a sweet old man. He was way up in his 90s. Had a beautiful wife and grown children that were just nice. And they all made something of themselves. And he farmed that land and raised his family on that 40 acres. But he brought his child bride and his young self to that place, bought those 40 acres, built his house, and was making his life. Well, my dad was talking to his friend. They were coffee clutching on my dad's kitchen table, and he goes, "Oh, the people here, they just can be kind of mean. They, just keep trying to tell me where the Publix is." He goes, "I've lived here 15 years." And, boy, I hear you. And my dad goes, "What do you mean you've lived here for 70 years?" And he goes, "I know, but I wasn't born here." And my dad goes, "What? Wait, you mean people act like that to you?" And he did our imitation, what we always imitated them. "Y'all are from around here," with the hands up in the armpits. That's it, when you know you're in trouble around there. Is when those hands go up in those armpits. You're just cruising for a bruising. And they would tell that old guy, none of them were even born when he showed up. But he wasn't from around there. They all knew it.
Yeah.
And he said he still got silliness from people.
Yeah.
Even though he lived there longer than just about anybody by then. So it's a weird culture, a strange thing to our little family. And, we had some experiences.
Well, you wound up having to go to court, and reading the section where you went to court and you had to sit there and stay quiet while they were presenting their side of the story. I was just thinking, oh, I bet you were seething on the inside.
Well, our little family had some trials, and Betty, our main narrator in the story, had to be still. She couldn't help. She couldn't say why you guys, or call them out for the stories they were telling.
Right, exactly.
So you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
In court.
Well, I just kept thinking. I think it was Tom Hanks that did the movie The Burbs, and I think it was Jim Carrey did a movie about I know it was the movie with Michael Keaton when he moves in and rents
Pacific Heights.
Yeah, Pacific Heights. I was thinking this is the country version of Pacific Heights.
Kind of, yeah. That movie came up a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because they were like doing surveillance and stuff and trying to catch just really ridiculous stuff.
And in the story they were making things up. It was it was lies, and so that was the legal dilemma, was to prove the lies or prove what really did happen.
Yeah, exactly. And there was one scene in the book that I was just like, I really hate when stuff like this happens, because as a Southerner, you really, really have to fight the stigma of, well, you're from the South, and you're white, so you must be racist, and there was one incident in the book, I was just like, lady, you sure don't help us by doing this, and it was about your daughter and the doll. Yeah, and she was just taken aback that you would allow your daughter to play with a non-white doll.
Yeah,
and
we had a lot of instances where race relations was a factor, and that offended and affected me. So it got into my story.
Yeah, and I was just, like I said, when I just read that, I was just like, people like that just don't help the rest of us. Because, for the most part, we're not as stereotyped, the way we're stereotyped to be so much, like I said, in movies and media and stuff like that. But occasionally you just do have those folks that don't help us. So, but I really, really enjoyed it. Now, I'll be honest, I did not get all the way through it, but what I did read of it, I was just like, I could hear the narrator in my head. It was just, you're just sucked into what's going on at the time. So, now, do you guys still raise cows?
No. We don't have the cows anymore. We were trying to downsize. As she went off into the world, we just kind of downsized a little bit.
So what kind of cows did y'all wind up raising?
Well, we had Holsteins for a long time. When we just some of our neighbors had Holsteins, and that seemed to be the best money. So we're like, well, okay, let's try that. And we loved the Holsteins, and they would have baby, and we'd sell off the mama and the baby to the dairy.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually at the same time we'd be at that auction, we'd get some new babies,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd bottle raise the babies,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd, you know, keep going with like that. We did that for a lot of years, but the Holsteins were kind of a little higher maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So as time went on and we got busier and different things happened, we switched to Angus mixes, Angus crosses, and Santa Gertrudis, the big red ones.
Yes. Yes.
And then we had some odd Charolais and some different ones that, you know, just were amusing at the auction.
Yeah.
And they kind of got so easy they did it themselves. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to do much with them. But they'd bring us a baby every year, and we'd
Mm-hmm.
keep on going.
So did you ever have to help deliver any calves?
Especially with the Holstein.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the Holstein. They were a little bit more delicate.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we'd have trouble, and so even our daughter, when she was 6, 7, 8 years old, was helping us pull calves sometimes. She learned what to do, and we would help them. And once in a while, when they'd had one or two, they could do it themselves. But they were such pets, you know, they were such babies. They'd bring it right to my husband to show off their baby. And we'd, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
tell them what good cows they were and stuff. And it was such a nice life. We just did love our cows.
Yeah, and I can remember as a little girl, I grew up in the rural part of Wilkes County, and there was a huge pasture across the road from us, and the guy that owned the cows would come in the evenings and feed them, and he had a whistle for them. He had a specific whistle for them. But you know, those cows would start walking the fence line before they knew when he was coming.
They had watches.
Yeah, they would already be in single file line walking up the fence line towards the barn before he even got there. And he'd be there about a couple minutes later, you know, and he'd whistle, and then they started talking to him.
My husband would whistle with his mouth, you know, to call them, and they'd come running, because whenever he whistled and they came, they got a treat, you know. So they'd come no matter what time of the day or night. They would come and he whistled. And our daughter, from the time she was in kindergarten or so, it was her job in the morning to go feed the animals. And my husband had these big garbage cans all lined up for the cats and the dog and the goats and the chickens and the cows and the different feed. And she had a scoop, and she would, you know, open the can and get the scoop. They'd come to that. So if I wanted the cows, I would clang the scoop.
Yeah.
I don't know how to whistle.
Yeah.
And so they would come for that. But she was their girl, and they all just loved her. And my husband was the alpha of the property, and I was just, I cooked inside the house. So I was sort of extra, but I still loved it. I still loved the animals.
You know, and there's just something so peaceful about country living. I mean, even though I'm in the city limits of Monroe and I'm in the suburb, our lot has a really good wooded area into the backyard. And my next door neighbor and I have gotten to know each other really well this year, and because he does my yards for me now, but he always says, I see you out there every morning walking. And I do. I go out every morning and I walk and I look at stuff, and he says, you know your plants. He says, you know your trees. You can look at a leaf on a tree and tell somebody what that tree is and everything. And the funny story is, I've got some asparagus growing out here in the back that I planted a couple of years ago.
It takes 2 or 3 years to get in.
Yeah, and my cousin Jennifer was, you know, I was telling you about the story about me and Jennifer replacing the valve on the toilet, which is going to have to be a short story in itself that I'm going to have to write. But, you know, give 2 women a lot of initiative in YouTube, and we can do anything. But we went out the back door, and I was showing her my new plants and everything, and she was like, well, what's this? My neighbor had cut grass, and he says, down because I know you probably know what this is, and it just looked like something you wouldn't want cut down. And I said, yeah, that's my asparagus. And Jennifer looked at it and she goes, "That's not asparagus." And she's like, "Let me take a picture and use my little app thingy I've got that tells me what plants are." I says, "Jennifer, look down at the look down at the baby asparagus coming up, because the other piece I just let it go to bush."
It's like ferns.
Yeah.
Like fluffy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got several stalks that's done that, but I had another baby stalk down there, and I was like, "Look, that's asparagus. See, there's a baby." And she's like, "I can't believe you're growing asparagus in your backyard." And I said, "Yeah, tell Kylie," that's her daughter. I said, "Tell Kylie that's her dinner tomorrow night."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just something so peaceful about country living.
We loved watching them, all the personalities. I mean, it was amazing to us that all the cows and the babies had personalities.
Yeah.
And there was a pecking order and a culture and likes and dislikes of all the different ones. And we had a thing around our house when the babies would get running. They'd just like stampede and just run and run and run. And we just loved that. And we all liked it so much. We'd go tails up, because when they started running, their little tails would be straight up in the air. We'd go tails up. And so that we all could kind of look.
Yeah.
At the babies running. That was our favorite part.
And they seem to like to run right after a really good heavy thunderstorm. I had that with my horses. My horses would do that after a really strong thunderstorm. I think it's something about all the energy.
Maybe, or when it got cool on an evening, they would do it. It seemed like.
Yeah.
We enjoyed that.
Now, you were talking about pecking order. You mentioned you had chickens. Lori Duff was on a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me that she was raising chickens, and which immediately made me think of a mutual friend she and I had that passed away suddenly, and her name was Debbie, and Debbie used to raise chickens, and we would always talk about the pecking order with chickens, especially among the hens. The hens,
they have a little culture and community too. When you watch them.
Yeah, and two old. That's where the term "old Beanie" came from, you know, because
and feather-brained and scared like a chicken and running around like a chicken with your head cut off. I mean, that's kind of an uglier angle to it.
Oh, you just took me back to a childhood summer where I had to help clean chickens, because that was the summer I went with my cousins, and that weekend, their dad had decided that was going to be the chicken killing weekend, and that's the reason why we were down there. I grew up country, honey.
People always said, "Do you kill your chickens? Do you kill your cows?" And I'm like, "Oh." And they're like, "You don't?" I'm like, "Nope." Under cellophane, like God intended.
Well, I kind of had wondered if you guys did that. Now, did your daughter?
Just never did.
Did your daughter get into FFA or 4-H or anything like that?
No, it wasn't real big in the school there, and so she never did. But she did want to be a veterinarian since she was tiny, and I got reading up long about high school. She was real good in science and math, just naturally, and I got reading up that if you want to go to vet college, you kind of need veterinary experience. You need to have shadowed, you need to have interned, you need to have been with a veterinary shop, you need to have done something. I said, "Hey, you need a vet job." And so, friend of a friend, my dad had a gazillion dogs and cats and was friendly with the vet, and had a friend of his wife was a technician at the vet. Anyway, it's never what you know.
Yeah.
My daughter got in to volunteer, because everyone knows, I guess, if you're in the vet line, that you got to have vet experience. So the kids all crowd the vet shops and want a job. Well, they're not going to hire everybody. They can't.
Right.
But they'll let people volunteer. So my daughter volunteered, and after about 5 or 6 weeks, she got the job. She's a little animal whisperer, and was just sort of unique and interesting with all animals, and they found use for her.
Well, that's cool.
She worked there for 2 years. Then at the end of that 2 years, she just kind of, her thing to me was, I love the animals, but I just don't like the people.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. It's like customers. Customer relation problem that she had with people that weren't treating the animals like she thought they ought to be
Right,
treated,
right.
because she was very in tune with all the animals and knew exactly what their problem was, knew exactly, maybe not medically, but you know, as far as feelings,
Right.
she did know.
Right, right.
Better than the vet, probably.
Yeah.
But she, you know, would conflict sometimes with some of the customers, and that was a problem in the business. And she would conflict sometimes with a couple of the vets that worked there that were kind of meaner, more stern.
Yeah.
And she just went, I don't want to do this, and now I don't know what to do, you know. So teenage girls.
Yeah.
But anyway, she survived it. She became an engineer, which is another niche that she fits well. She would have been a great veterinarian, but that wasn't working, so she became an engineer. It's great at it.
Well, you know, it's cool, and it's amazing how life has a way of working out. And I've got a niece that just graduated high school this year, and this is one of these kids that has known from day one what she wanted to do. I mean, and just very, very smart, very, very laser focused on her future and everything. And for the longest time, she wanted to become a medical examiner, a forensic pathologist, and to be able to do all the medical examiner work. And so I think she got to researching, and it's really interesting because the lead female in my next book is going to be a medical examiner. And I had researched a little bit of what it takes, and my niece had started researching it, and come find out, you actually have to become a doctor first. And I think she was just like, well, I don't want to do that, because I don't want to have to work with the living people. I just want to work with the dead people.
Oh, I think there are forensic technicians.
Yeah.
You know, where she could.
Yeah.
Those kinds of programs.
Yeah.
But, my husband's uncle was the medical examiner of Arizona.
Oh, wow.
100 years ago. Uncle Dan, was who Quincy, MD, was modeled after.
Really? That was one of my favorite shows. I loved that show.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's how solved the mystery, that fixed figured out what happened.
Yeah.
And his capacity as the medical examiner of the whole state, the state of Arizona.
That is so cool, because that was like one of my favorite shows. But well, she has decided, like your daughter, she has decided to change gears, and she is going to go into biochemistry. It's going to be her. I mean, she's going to stay in the science field, but she's just not going to do the medical examiner side of it, because she doesn't want to have to do the years of being a doctor. So anyway, well, Becky, I want to say thank you very much for coming up, because you drove up from McDonough. So thank you for coming and joining us tonight. And guys, we do have her book available here in the book shop. Remember, we're located inside the Monroe Mercantile in downtown Monroe. And also it's available on our website at southernpenbookshop.com. The answer to the trivia question tonight was Napoleon. That was the name of the pig in George Orwell's book, Animal Farm. He named the lead pig Napoleon. We're going to have Chess Britt with us next Thursday night. He has written an inspirational book that is kind of a Christian inspirational guide, and he's a very interesting person to get to know too. That's one thing I love about the book shop, is I've gotten to meet so many interesting authors, not just authors, but people, that have had interesting lives. Storytellers. And I actually have two authors in the book shop that are female pilots. You're one, and Jeannie Bernstein, who lives in Athens, is another female pilot. So, hey, girl power for flying. Don't forget that we're not going to have any more live sales until November, and I didn't realize that was election night when I picked that date, so I'm definitely going to change the next live sale. It will be in November, because I want to highlight our Christmas merchandise that we're getting to come in. So thank you guys for letting us entertain you for an hour. Like I said, there's always two things the book should never be judged by. One is how it's published. The second is by its cover. And thank you for letting us introduce you to your favorite independent author. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, good night and God bless.